Today we're going to have a great conversation. The topic is self over situation. How to live a life of health, happiness, and wholeness. And it's a great honor to be here and have my dear friends here with me. And we have Sadhvi Bhagawati Saraswati and Dr. Bruce Lipton. So, yes, give them a big round of applause. So we're just going to start this conversation, this deepening conversation, with just what does the term self over situation mean to each of you? Sadhviji, would you like to start?
Sure. First of all, thanks so much, Chris, for jumping into this role so lovingly. Originally, our spiritual lecture series, as you've seen over the last few days, has been just individual lectures. But Bruce and I decided that rather than just each of us jumping up and giving a lecture for 45 minutes, it would be so much more meaningful and enjoyable and alive and beneficial for all of us if we actually opened it up into a conversation. And Chris so lovingly jumped in to play our role as moderator. So thank you all so much. The title really stems from something that is so pervasive, whether you're in a healing profession, on a physical level, whether you are in a spiritual role, whatever it is, we all so frequently hear people or hear our own selves saying things like, I would be great if only, or if I just had this, or if this problem would go away, then everything would be perfect. And for me, it's actually illustrated really beautifully with my favorite joke that I always love to share, which is of the man who goes to the doctor and he says to the doctor, there's something really wrong with me. My whole body hurts. When I touch my knees, they hurt. I touch my head, it hurts. I touch my back, it hurts. And so the doctor runs every test and every scan. And at the end, he calls the man in and says, well, the good news is there's nothing wrong with your knees or your head or your back. The bad news is your finger's broken. And since your finger's broken, whatever you touch, it hurts. And the reason that I love that joke so much, and for me it's really the foundation of this session, is that's how so many of us live. We blame things in the outside world. Like the man thought the problem was his knees or his head or his back. We blame whether it's our genes, my parents gave this to me, whether it's something in our physical situation that we're struggling with, a health challenge, whether it's our in-laws, whether it's our spouses or lack of spouses, or children or lack of children, or how far we live from our jobs and so how much we have to commute. Whatever it is, that always gets the blame for why we are not happy. It's always a matter of one thing between me and happiness. And this time together is really about how can we live from a place of self with an awareness that my inner state, my happiness, my wholeness is not dependent on things in the outer world. And my beloved friend doesn't even begin to encompass how I feel about Bruce. Let's just call him my beloved. We'll call that a noun instead of an adjective. Speaks about this from a scientific perspective so beautifully in terms of the role of the environment whether the environment is our bloodstream, whether the environment is our own thoughts, on literally our physical existence, on everything down to the cellular level of which genes are being expressed or not expressed. So he's really taken this spiritual teaching that the sages and the saints and the rishis of every tradition have told us for thousands of years, which is, you create your reality. Your thoughts create your reality. And Bruce has brought that down to the scientific and cellular level for those of us in the world, of which there are so many and such a large percentage, for whom if it's scientific, it's real. And so he's brought that level of reality to the power of the self. And so we thought it would just be such a wonderful opportunity to have this conversation on it today.
Thank you so much, dearest. Thank you so much. I so appreciate my dear friend, because I came from a world of science. I had no background in spirituality, no background in any of the programming and information that you all have received. So I was like completely unaware of the spiritual realm as a scientist. As a scientist, in fact, you don't even mention the word spirit in a laboratory anywhere. You don't even mention the word mind in the laboratory anywhere. So I was completely unaware of this, but I have to say that once I saw a connection between the invisible realm and the physical realm, it profoundly changed my entire life. And the significance is I started to follow through on what I learned, and I'm very proud to say that my teachers were cells. I studied the cells, and when you study them long enough, they tell you things. And I started to realize the nature that they were telling me. And it's interesting because on a scientific background, I can talk about all the spiritual things after learning from my dear friend, but on a scientific background, something happened in 1925 that changed the world in a sense of awareness, but didn't change the world in activities and functions and processes. Our awareness changed, but we haven't really brought it into the world. They say, well, what happened? And in 1925, physicists said that our vision of a universe split into an invisible energy realm and a material physical realm was a total illusion. That everything is energy. The whole thing, there is no matter in this world. And to summarize what the meaning was, a famous physicist in 1930 by the name of Sir James Jeans said, "We have been led to believe that the universe is a great machine, when in fact it is more a great thought." And the reality about that was quantum physicists have established since 1925 that consciousness is the primary mechanism of creativity of the world that we experience. In fact, a more recent article in the journal Nature, which is like a scientific mainstream journal, was an article by a quantum physicist at Johns Hopkins University by the name of Richard Conn Henry. And his article was entitled "The Mental Universe." I know the last two lines in the article because they were like so powerful. And here's what the conclusion of the article was. The universe is immaterial. It's mental and spiritual. Live and enjoy. And this is so exciting because science is coming out saying it mental and spiritual. It's like, oh my God. But that's the quantum physics part. And the reality about it, why is that so important, as Sadhvi had just mentioned, it's our thoughts that are manifesting this world. Now you could say that's a spiritual thing, and now I say not only is it spiritual, now it is fundamental basic science of the universe. And it says then the thoughts are creative. Well, if the thoughts are creative, then who is having the thought? And you start to realize, I'm having the thought. Well, then the truth is simple, as Richard Conn Henry said, You are creating this world with your mental activity and your spirituality combined. And then all of a sudden it says, well, then if I'm creating the world, then my original belief that when things didn't go right, I was a victim. The universe wasn't supporting me. You know, it's like, oh, I try so hard and the universe is not giving me things. It turns 180 degrees around. And it basically says this: we are creating this world. And then I say, your mind is creating this world. And then I give you the science that says there are two minds that are operating at the same time. One is called the conscious mind, and one is called the subconscious mind. I say, what's the difference? The conscious mind is where you are as a spirit, an entity, a unique identity. You are in that conscious mind and perceiving the world. I say, what about the subconscious mind? It's not a creative mind. The subconscious mind is habits, things that you've learned and you experienced in your life, and they become habits. So the subconscious mind is not thinking, creating. It's subconscious mind, push the button, play the behavior. So here's the point. When we are in our conscious mind, we are connecting our spirituality to the biology and the physical planet that we're in. And that is the creative mind. That's the one you wake up in the morning and say, oh, I wish I had this, and I desire that, and these are the things I want. And then you go out and start the day, and then guess what? 95% of the day, you are not operating from the conscious mind. Science has recognized 95% of the day, because we are thinking 95% of the day, our behavior is now controlled by the subconscious mind. I go, okay, so what's the difference? And the final conclusion of this is the conscious mind with your creativity has your wishes and your desires. The subconscious mind was programmed by other people, your mother, your father, your siblings, and your community. So what is the difference? You wake up with a wish and a desire of what you want, and then the rest of the day, you play the programs that you got from other people that don't answer your wishes and don't support your desires, and all you see is the consequence of it and go, oh my God, why is it not working? And the answer is because you don't see, because remember the name is subconscious, below conscious. So when that behavior is playing, psychologists will tell us 70% or more of the programs in the subconscious are disempowering, self-sabotaging, and limiting behaviors. So the simple reality is this: we have great wishes and desires, and yet our life is not controlled by that. Our life is controlled by the programming, and that programming is the disempowering program. So all you see is the consequence of the invisible subconscious, which will sabotage all the desires and wishes you have. And then to conclude that, what if you just didn't default to the subconscious? What if you just stayed in the conscious mind? That's called being mindful. And why is it relevant? Because when you stay conscious, keep your mind present, you are the creator of your life. And when people are in mindfulness, they manifest their wishes, their desires, and their happiness. So for all of us, it's sort of a wake-up call. You think you're running your life with your wishes and desires? It's an illusion. You're really running your life with your programs acquired from other people.
Thank you, Bruce. Sadhvi. So that's very revealing that this subconscious programming is running our lives. So what can we do? What are the steps of the pathways to really get into a space where it's not controlling us anymore?
Well, I think that Bruce has explained it so beautifully in terms of the alternative to the subconscious being the conscious. And this is the reason that regardless of what path of meditation you go into, regardless of what stream of spirituality you go into, there are some really fundamental aspects, which are mindfulness and presence and awareness. And so, for example, if I said, okay, On the count of 3, we're all going to get really angry. You've got, I'm going to count to 3, and in 30 seconds, not acting it out, but inside, not the acting of anger, but you've got 30 seconds to actually feel full of rage. Okay, 1, 2, 3, go. So what most of us notice is it's really hard. And the reason that it's really hard, even though every one of us has something to be angry at, may even be something from today or yesterday. Of course, we have things from decades ago that we're still hanging on to, but we even have recent things. And yet, interestingly, we almost cannot become consciously angry. And the reason is that that rage, that fury, I can become consciously disapproving. I can become consciously aware that what someone or a government or an organization is doing is wrong. That's different than rage. That's different than the stuff that leads us to say things or do things that later on we go, oh my God, what did I do? That's the stuff that ends up ruining our lives, our relationships, our health. It's the stuff that leads so many of us into alcohol, drugs, chocolate cake after chocolate cake, whatever our drug of choice may be, because there's this experience inside and we don't know what to do with it. But that experience comes only when we are not conscious. And that's why you cannot consciously become full of rage. And so, Chris, I think the simplest solution is mindfulness. And if you look at the meditative traditions of the world, you'll realize the emphasis that they place on it in terms of just little things like, take 30 minutes, eat this raisin. I mean, anybody who's been to a meditation retreat or workshop, one of the things they do is they'll give you a grape, a raisin, a tiny little thing that most of us swallow without even thinking about it. And they'll say, spend the next half an hour eating this raisin, eating the grape, or doing walking meditation, where you literally make it pretty much from one end of the stage to the other end of the stage in the full 90 minutes of the class. Why? Because by bringing our mindfulness to the present moment, we give ourselves the possibility of happiness. You cannot be happy tomorrow. This is actually really sad when we realize it, because so many of us are forsaking today for happiness tomorrow. I'll just deal with this again today so that tomorrow I can be happy. But the truth is, you can actually not be happy tomorrow. You also can't be happy yesterday. Your only possibility for happiness is right here in this moment. It's the only opportunity we have right here and right now. And so if I'm not here, because my mind is elsewhere, as Puja Swamiji says, in Paris without a visa. If I'm elsewhere, then I'm being run by my subconscious, which means I have no chance for happiness. Because as Bruce explained so beautifully, the subconscious is just this programming that leads us all to later wonder, who was that? I mean, like, I really love you. Why did I say all those things? How did I possibly act in that way? I'm a yogi. Right? I mean, who was that who took over my body? and shouted or cried or drank or smoked or did whatever I did that's not in line with how I consciously identify. Well, that's this subconscious programming. And so if I can just keep bringing it back to the present moment with my breath, with a mantra, whatever I choose to use, that's all it is. It's just about bringing it back. It's not some great esoteric, super complex, you've got to do, you know, a really, really long course and a beginning course and advanced course and get this degree or that degree. It's just being here in this moment. And yeah, the mind has a habit to wander, and we bring it back. And then it wanders, and we bring it back. And for every moment that we're able to have it here is a moment when we are accepting that invitation of the universe to be in joy. It's a moment in which we are opening ourselves to the truth of who we are, the source of who we are, which is that source of joy.
Thank you. When we look at our lives, and I tell you that 95% of your life is coming from the subconscious program, this is not, it's new on a scientific awareness of how this mechanism works. But what's interesting is for 400 years, the knowledge that you could program somebody and control their lives has been available. It was the Jesuits who 400 years ago said, give me a child until it's 7 and I will show you the man. Most people didn't understand what they were saying, and what it is the first 7 years, which we now know biologically and scientifically is the program period. They knew that 400 years ago, and they said if I can get that program in the first 7 years, that program will determine the life of that individual. I'll show you the man because they will represent the program. Now, the really important part is, since every one of us has been programmed, the big issue is, so what were those programs? Because if I ask you, so what program did you get when you were 1 year old? I have no idea. I wasn't really there. In fact, you were actually being programmed even before you were born, the last trimester of pregnancy. You were being programmed. And I go, well, this is really a critical issue, because the first thing I'm telling you is your life is 95% programmed, and most of that is really disempowering. And of course, the first thing I would think is, then what are those programs so I could deal with them? So I want to make something very easy for you so you don't have to go and review your whole life and try to figure out what the programs are. Save you a lot of time. The fact is this: you are playing the program 95% of the day, meaning your life is a printout of your program. So you don't have to go back in time to review. That would just actually irritate the system more, because every time you review those things that unsettled you when you were younger, it just reinforces that same pain that you had earlier. So going back and finding out who did what to who is more than just a waste of time. It actually will set you back. As a matter of fact, there's an old phrase that people have heard, and it says, don't kill the messenger over the message. What that means is this: don't go back and blame all the people that did this and that and that and that. That's irrelevant. Who they are is irrelevant. What's relevant is, what program did you walk away with? Not who did the event, but what you learned. So now I said, okay, I've been programmed and I have no idea what the program is. I said, then look at your life, and here's the simple resolution. Everything in your life that you like and it comes to you is because you have a program to support that. That's wonderful. That means that's great. It's going to come to you because that program is bringing it to you. But in contrast, this is the one that's important. Anything you work hard to accomplish, anything you struggle over to make it happen, anything you put a lot of effort in, I want this, I'm going to work like crazy, I'm going to get this. My first question is, why are you working so hard? And the answer is very simple. Anything you're struggling to try to accomplish, whether it's health or love, relationships, whatever it is, if you're struggling, it represents a simple fact. Your subconscious programming doesn't support that conclusion. So the fact is, what are my programs? Look at your struggle. And wherever you're struggling, the struggle is not because the universe won't provide for you. The struggle is an internal job. The struggle is you're trying to overcome previous programming that prevents you to go to that destination. So the wonderful part about this understanding is you don't have to review your life. You can look right now. At this one moment, just look in your head and say, what are the things that I keep trying to get, and they seem to be elusive. I can't get them. They're always out of reach. I say, the universe is not holding back. It's your own invisible subconscious behavior. And once you understand where the issues are and you start to really focus on the point that it's not the universe that's providing the trouble, it's myself, you have the first inclination, the first idea, the first understanding of how to change your life, because now you know exactly what issue is confronting you. And again, if you understand it's an internal issue, then you, and this is the most important part, otherwise this would be the worst seminar you ever heard. The most important part is this: you can change the programming. You can rewrite your subconscious programs. And why is that relevant? If you took the wishes and desires of the conscious mind and used that as a program to put the beliefs into the subconscious mind, it's the most exciting and liberating thing you can ever do in your life. You know why? Because once it's in the subconscious program, 95% of the day, without you even thinking about it, your mind will take you to that direction. And that is your freedom. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So I wanted to go a little bit more personal here with both of you. And what was that breakthrough moment in your lives, like that aha moment that really got you to experience, yourselves and live a more wholeful, happy life?
For me, there were actually two. They were about 4 or 5 days apart from each other. The first was when I came here to the banks of Ganga, now 20 and a half years ago. I was 25, in the midst of a PhD in psychology. I was not spiritual. I was definitely not religious, and I was not one of those people even who say, well, I'm not religious, but I'm spiritual. In retrospect, of course, now that my understanding of spirituality has grown, I can, of course, look back and say, oh, yeah, here were the pieces. But at the time, I would not have even self-identified as a spiritual seeker at all. I came to India just on a travel break in the midst of a PhD program, and I was a scientist and doing pediatric neuropsychology. I had graduated from Stanford undergrad and was then getting a PhD, and I was really very focused. And here's what the equation that the world gives us you need for happiness. You need to have a good degree from a good university, then you need to get a good job, and you need to have a nice house in the right area of town, and a picket fence that's just about the right height, and you need to look the right way, and all of these pieces. And for me at the time, I had really put the pieces together, and so we were what I now refer to as happy by default, where we had the pieces, but what we didn't have was actually a real experience of what joy is. So came to India traveling, I stand on the banks of Ganga, pretty much just where we do Aarti every night, although I didn't know Aarti, I didn't know Paramarth. We were staying in a hotel. And I had an experience on the banks of Ganga in which it was literally as though a veil that I had had over my eyes for 25 years was just pulled off. And everything that I thought I had understood, everything I thought about who I was, what the universe was just in a split second over. And I literally was knocked to the ground and I burst into tears. They weren't sad tears, of course, but they weren't even happy tears. They were just tears of being in the presence of the truth. It was a visual experience of literally beholding the divine. It was a physiological experience of being one with that which I was beholding. And it was more real than anything I had ever experienced, anything I'd ever been taught, anything I'd ever learned, any goal I ever thought I had had. And so in that moment, who I thought I was, what I thought the universe was, it was over. And although I certainly couldn't articulate in any way what I now was experiencing, in fact, I just kept crying and saying, it's so beautiful, it's so beautiful, it's so beautiful. And that was all it was. It was just so beautiful. And so that was really the first experience that just turned my entire perception, because nothing had changed about me, the physical being. I was the same one who had walked down to the banks of Ganga 5 minutes earlier. And yet everything had changed. And so, yeah. And then about 5 days later, I'm going to fast forward through this really quickly, but I had met Puja Swamiji, and I finally was in a situation of having an opportunity to speak to him. And it was a time where he would answer questions, and he turned to me and he said, yes. And suddenly I was in a state of panic because I didn't have a question, but I was a straight A student, like I was a star academic, and here I was on call. I had to come up with something. And my brain immediately started doing this. And so I asked him about fear. It was something that I had struggled with in my life, and I said, tell me about fear. Why do we fear? And he said, you fear because you don't trust. Okay. And I then gave him my story, the details of which are not relevant. We all have our stories. But to me, my story was a really good one. It was true, of course. It wasn't a fictional story on this physical plane of existence. And it was a story that for 25 years of life had gotten me a lot of, oh my God, oh, you poor thing. And it was a story that for me really explained any time I needed a reason to not be stepping up to the plate of my life, to not be able to be in the present, to not be able to embrace who I was. Well, I had this story, and it was a good story. And everyone's response to the story was, oh, yeah. Oh, you know, and I got my head in a lot of people's laps with them, you know, doing this. And Swamiji looked at me, and he said, are you going to take that to the grave? Now, I was 25. And I said, well, God, no, Swamiji, of course not. And he said, well, so are you going to let it go a day before you die? And I said, well, no, I mean, he said, how about a month before you die? And I was silent. I didn't know how to answer that question. Was he saying I was going to die soon? What was his point? And he looked at me and he said, "You're waiting for someone to come in and draw the line for you. For someone to come in and say, okay, now you can let it go." He said, "No one will. That's up to you." And he said, "You can carry it to your grave. You can let it go a day before you die, a week before you die, a month before you die, or tonight." And he said, "You know, we have this beautiful ceremony called the Arti." And he said, "I'm going to tell them to give you the fire so you can wave the fire." And he said, "And after that, I want you to go and stand in Ganga. And I want you to hold Ganga water in your hands. And I want you to take that whole story, all the pain, every aspect of that story, and I want you to offer it to Ganga." Now, I was a scientist, and I was an arrogant and slightly obnoxious scientist. And my journal entries for that day, I was perfectly polite in front of him, but I used to keep a journal, and my journal entries for that day say things like, "Give it to the river." He says that I should just give it to the river, as though it were an apple core or a banana peel, rather than my life. And at some point, late afternoon, early evening, I had this moment in which some wise part of me came in and said, "Okay, look. Yes, it sounds quaint. Yes, it sounds sweet. Yes, it even sounds really simplistic. And thank God you've got a world of psychotherapy to go back to who understands the need for a process and understands how long these things take. But right now, you're here. And maybe the point of you coming thousands of miles and winding up in front of this master in orange robes who tells you to give it to the river, maybe there was something in that." And so I committed to myself one thing and one thing only, which was I would do it sincerely. I had no concept that it would work. In fact, I was pretty sure it wouldn't. But I made a commitment simply to sincerity, that I would take the message and do what he asked me to do with sincerity. And I stood in Ganga, with Ganga in my hands, for I have no idea how long. And I cried, and I cried, and I cried, and I stood, and I stood, and I stood. And then it was given. And 20.5 years later, what I can tell you is it really was given. And it was the sort of thing that, of course, defied everything that I understood about psychology, everything that I understood about anything in the universe. The river doesn't just take our childhood, doesn't just take our pain. But what it made so clear was that there was an I who was separate from that. Because look, here I am standing in the river, and there goes the pain. And there was an I who walked out of the river, and an I who walked back up the ashram without the story, without the identity. And that awareness was for me the moment of realizing that it was never me to begin with. And that who I was this being that was now walking back up into the ashram. And that's been something since then that I've held so dearly and have been so committed to inviting and opening and trying to provide opportunities for more and more people to experience that, because it works, it happens.
In my particular situation, there are very many parallels exactly to what Sadhvi was saying. I was a scientist, and as a scientist, we don't bring spirituality and mind into the story. It's all genes and cells and molecules and all that. And my research on stem cells revealed that while I was teaching in medical school that genes control life, my research revealed that it was the environment in which the cells lived that controlled the cells. It was outside information coming into the cells. And I remember how specifically, in a moment of time, that I was working on trying to understand the mechanics from a molecular point of view. How does an environmental signal control biology? And I was working not on the genes, I was working on the skin of the cell, the membrane. And it was so profound, it's hard for me to even describe it. I'm working on the understanding, how does information from the environment control biology? And I had looked at the membrane for years, and I wrote a new definition of the mechanism of the membrane. And I wrote this definition, and this is in 1985. It was about 2 a.m., and I wrote down the membrane is a liquid crystal semiconductor with gates and channels. When I wrote that down, there was a pause, and I said, I read something exactly like that. And right next to my first computer, a Macintosh, was a simple book of understanding your microprocessor. And I opened it up and I said somewhere, and I opened it right in the introduction. It said, a chip is a crystal semiconductor with gates and channels. And I thought, oh, what a coincidence. They have the same definition. And then in a couple of seconds, I started to say, wait a minute. One for one, the parts are exactly the same. I said, oh my God. The membrane is a computer chip, and on the surface of the cell are like keys, like on a typewriter. And I started to realize, oh my goodness, the environment is typing on the surface of the cell information that went into the cell and control the genetics and the behavior. And it was like, oh, this is real exciting. And I'm typing on my own computer, typing this information in, and then I realized I am outside of the computer, typing on the keyboard, and the information is coming up on the computer. And then I said, oh my God. This keyboard on the surface of your cells has a number of keys that represent a PIN number, a personal identification number, and no two of you have the same keys on that. Each of us have a different PIN number to get into our own cells. It's our personal identity, and these are the keys. And I realized, oh my God, while we've been focusing on these what are called receptors as the source of identity, I realized, no, it's what's activating, what's typing is the identity. And then it hit me and I said, oh my God, my identity is not in the cell. My identity is a signal coming from the environment, typing on the keyboard. And then I said, oh. And the first thing that hit me was, I can't die. I'm not even in here. And that instant, the fear which all of us have in our deepest bottom belief system is a fear of our mortality. And when that moment of like, I can't die, not as a devotional belief, it had nothing to do with that, it was just a mechanism, I said, oh my God, I can't die. I tell you, the same thing happened with Sadhvi as me. Tears started rolling down my face, and this joy was an ache in my heart that I've never experienced before. I spent 40 years in my head. That's how I became an academician and a research scientist. And when this moment hit, it was my heart that blew open. I refer to it as a heart orgasm. And, and that was the first time I experienced my heart as an essential part of my own conscious existence. And what happened was I was overwhelmed, first with the fact that I was not spiritual at 1:59 a.m., and at 2 a.m., I was 100% spiritual, with no devotional interface in between. and then I have to add this, because this becomes the next important step. Yes, I saw this. I understood it. It was beautiful. It was in my conscious awareness, my knowledge, my learning. And I got so excited. I wanted to tell people. And I couldn't wait to get some people together. And I'd bring them into the room and I'd say, let me explain this mechanism. Because if you understand this mechanism, you'll understand you are the most powerful creator that exists. And I couldn't wait to tell them. And I'd get up there and I'd tell them. And then the audience would look at me and go, you know, Lipton, your life doesn't look that good if you really think that's true, because your life doesn't represent anything you just said. And there was a pause, and I started to realize, it's like, and I almost said this, so I want to thank the universe for not making me so foolish. I almost said, well, do as I say and not as I do. It was then the most important lesson, number 2, and that was this. I don't care how much knowledge is in your head. If that knowledge doesn't go into your subconscious, your life will stay exactly the same as it was. You can be the brightest, smartest academic. And I say, fine, did it change your life? And the answer is no. You have to take the knowledge that you are walking within your conscious mind and put that knowledge into your subconscious programming. And when you do that, you are all powerful in the creation of your own life. And so just walking around and being able to recite all these wonderful sayings and things that you hear from all the wonderful teachers that we have, and you say, oh, yes, I remember that. That's a good quote. That's a nice quote. Oh, that's a wonderful saying. It's irrelevant until that saying becomes part of your program, because now you are living from the saying and not talking about the saying. And that was the total transformation of a life that on an academic level was successful, on a personal level, I don't even want to talk about that, but it changed everything. Why? Because instead of having to chase after life, after this understanding, things came to me. The light will bring it to you. The only thing that's in your way of the light is a block in your belief that other people have put into your programming. You take your knowledge that you have, make it your subconscious program, and you will manifest all of the wonderful spiritual wisdom that you have heard throughout your whole life. Is not words now, it is life and behavior, and that's our destination. Thank you.
Thank you. Awesome. So I want to go back to the programming conversation again, because we've been talking about this individual, understanding your individual programming. But what about, I'd love to just have you share about the collective programming. The collective program, we're all one. We know this concept of being all one, and then there is this great collective programming that is basically creating this sort of, which we can call destructive paradigm. So how do you see that changing?
So it's a huge question, but just to address one aspect of it for now, what I would say is our collective programming comes, of course, from the culture, from societies, because now we're not talking about our individual parents, our individual 5th grade teacher who told us we were worthless and stupid, but the society, the culture. And what's happening today, which is so, so tragic, and yet the moment we're aware of it, we actually have the ability to change it. In fact, the awareness changes it automatically, is a myth of scarcity, a myth of less than wholeness. And here's what it looks like. So every day we watch TV, we go online where we see advertisements, we read magazines, we see billboards. Whatever it is, we are inundated with thousands and thousands and thousands, I don't know the statistics, but I'm sure it's enormous, numbers of different advertisements every day, whether on our phones, on our computer screens, on our billboards, on TV commercials. Now, those advertisements, this is just marketing, it's fully legal, there's nothing really, really super insidious about it. Companies are just trying to sell you something. Whether they're trying to sell you a pair of jeans or dishwashing soap or a mobile phone, the only way for them to sell you something is to first convince you that there is a lack in your life that their product will fill. Basic psychology of marketing. I cannot sell you something if you are already living in a state of awareness of your fullness and your wholeness and your completion. Because then you know, well, I don't need that brand of jeans or these shoes or that type of mobile or to switch to that type of soap in order to live a life that looks as good as the people in the commercial. So first we have to convince you that there's something lacking. And if you look for a moment just at how this works, let's say that I'm trying to sell soap. So what soap really does is cleans us. It's a perfect necessity, no problem with soap. But if I were trying to sell soap honestly, we would talk about which brand of soap cleans how many parts per million of bacteria compared to a different brand, or how quickly it washes off your skin. But that's not what commercials for soap look like. They look like beautiful people who are lathering up while they're singing in the shower in the morning, and then their beautiful spouses come into the bathroom also singing, and then they walk out. And their beautiful child has gotten out of bed and dressed himself and done his homework and had his breakfast. And now this beautiful family walks out of the house together, hand in hand, and you just see a little thing that says Dove or Zest. Now, we're not talking cleanliness. We're selling happy families. And what the subconscious programming message is, if you don't feel like singing in the shower in the morning, if your spouse doesn't come in singing in the shower, or you don't have a spouse, or you've got to drag your kid out of bed in the morning and force him to take a shower and force him to do his homework, or you don't have a kid, well, the problem is you're using the wrong brand of soap. And again, from a marketing perspective, this is legal. There's nothing super, super wrong. This is why marketers spend billions of dollars on ad campaigns. But now look at what's happening to our subconscious. Thousands of times every day, different companies are first convincing me that there is something lacking in my life. Now, I can't buy everything. I can't switch brands of soap for every commercial I see. I can't take every vacation to every resort, drive every model car, which means that even if I do what I'm supposed to do in the advertisement, I can't do all of it. So I'm left with a pervasive, subconscious experience of there being something lacking in my life, that if I just had the money or the time to actually buy it all, I could solve all those problems. And this, I think, is one of the most tragic, damaging, and insidious aspects of cultural brainwashing that is going on today. It's being used, of course, by politicians as well. Every problem you're facing, if you vote for me, I'll solve it. So wherever we turn, what we're being inundated with is the message that something is wrong in your life. Something is lacking. Ah, you may think you're happy, but let me show you what's lacking. And I've paid someone billions of dollars to put together this ad campaign because I've got to sell you my product. So you can be pretty sure that it's going to be effective and it's going to work. So now we're moving through the world with this sense of something lacking. And at some point in a spiritual practice, in a yoga practice, whatever it is, we realize, oh my God, I cannot keep changing brands of soap. I cannot keep buying things to bring happiness. So we stop doing that. But we're still left with that subconscious programming that says there's something wrong. And along with that goes the other campaign, which is you're running out of time. 24 hours left of this sale. There's only 2 tickets left. How many of you have gone online to buy something that you're just contemplating maybe buying, and you see it says 1 left at this price, 2 left at this price. 85 other people are looking at this website right now, planning to buy this thing you're looking at. So what we have been programmed into culturally today is, you're not enough. There is something wrong. It comes from outside of you, and you're running out of time to get it. And this, I think, is really the most problematic and dis-ease causing programming that we're all facing today. And really the only way to come out of it is consciousness. It's to be aware, wait, I am whole, I am complete. These people are just doing what they were hired to do. They're trying to sell soap, fine, let them do their thing. But I don't have to give them my subconscious. I don't have to give them my heart. I don't have to feel badly about myself just because Zest is trying to sell Zest and Dove is trying to sell Dove. There's nothing wrong with my family. But we have to be absolutely and acutely aware and conscious every moment.
Again, Sadhvi brought up the very important fact that people play on our fears. People play on our concerns. And why I want to bring a little extension to exactly what she said is that, well, in our mind, we start to realize that we're concerned, we're afraid, we don't have enough, I'm not safe, I'm not secure. And I say, oh, these thoughts, I was talking about the thoughts in your mind, go in and control your biology, your genetics, your physiology, and your health. And I go, yes, this is really true. I said, well, how can I tell you what your thoughts are in a sense that can I read your thoughts? And I say, yes, you know, I could put wires on your head, and it's called electroencephalograph, and I could read your brain activity. And I go, oh, great, I can see this brain activity. I want to tell you something that's profoundly important. We were programmed to believe that our thoughts are contained in our head. That if I have a thought, it's just for me, not for anybody else. It's inside, and it's working through me. And now I want to tell you about a new technology. It's not electroencephalograph. It's called magnetoencephalograph. I say, what's unique about that? I say, it reads your brain. I say, yeah, but so does EEG. I say, yeah, but EEG, you put the wires on the head, and you get the electrical activity conducted through the skin from the brain, and that's what I'm reading. And I say, what's different about MEG? The probe is out here. And I said, what does that mean? Your thoughts are not contained in your head. Your thoughts are broadcast to the field just like a radio broadcast. I said, well, what if I, as an individual, have a thought that says, let's have peace in the world? and I broadcast out there in the street and I say, let's have peace. And I look around, it's like, where's the peace? I don't see the peace. And here's what the relevance is. Each of us is broadcasting. If you get enough people to have the same thought, that broadcast is amplified. Each of us has a small power, but if you put 1,000 people with the same thought, 10,000, 100,000 people with the same thought, you are broadcasting a most powerful thought, not just in your body, but out in the field. I say your energy is in the field, the thought is in the field. And you go, well, what does that mean? And then I'll give you this most wonderful quote. I used it the other day in a lecture from Albert Einstein. And the quote is so important. Here's the quote. The field, so a definition, the field is the invisible energy. Right now you're in a field, there's cell phone broadcasts, television, radio broadcasts, all kinds of information coming across, but guess what? Each one of you is a broadcast in that field. The quote, the field is the sole governing agency of the particle. Particle is the material realm. So what was Einstein saying? It's the energy in the field that shapes the physical experience of our lives. And if enough of us collectively have an energy that's coherent and strong, and we broadcast the belief, we change the world. I just want you to recognize, as much as I wanted peace in the world, if not enough people are out there saying, let's have peace in the world, there is no peace. If I want to say, let's have a war, how can you have a war? You have to have enough people convinced that the war is going to benefit them so that their broadcasts say, yes, let's have a war because I and my colleagues, we're all going to have a better result from that. And the reality is this. The only things that change on this planet collectively are when we collectively share thoughts. And yoga, when you're in your postures, when you're in your process, your mind is sharing a thought, not just in your head, but all around you. So the whole idea about this is we have to recognize we are collectively creating reality with our thoughts. And if we want to change reality, it can change instantly. The moment we become coherent, the moment we collectively are on the same platform of thinking. You get enough people to say peace, there will be peace instantly in this world. But we've been programmed by other people to give them the power to tell us what we need. And as Sadhvi has been telling us so importantly, what we need is not what they tell us, what we need is what we know. And I really hope that you understand this, because when you have your thoughts, recognize it's not contained in your head, your thoughts out in the field. And that thought, the field, is the sole governing agency of matter. And therefore, what this world is looking for at this moment is an evolution. It's not an evolution of our biology. Our biology is already evolved. It's an evolution of our consciousness. When we collectively as a population say enough is enough, it will end. And when we say to our Mother Ganga and we say to the nature that we're living in, we're sorry, we have been destroying you, but now we are here to help, this planet will be restored in what is called a spontaneous remission. A spontaneous remission, a person could be dying of cancer and everybody's looking around, and all of a sudden the patient changes their belief and says, I'm not doing this, I'm doing something different. And guess what? How fast does it take that thought to change your cancer into peace again? It's called spontaneous remission. It will spontaneously change the planet. We are experiencing the groundswell of an evolution. And every one of you is a most important contributor to that evolution. Because when you recognize your thoughts are creating this, and we collectively agree that this is not what we want is a garden that we were given, the garden will instantly, spontaneously reappear. So our evolution is not waiting for something to happen. Our evolution is each one of us is a participant. It's not sit in your seat and wait for the evolution, look out your window. No, we are making evolution. So look at yourself as a powerful force, an energy, a belief and a thought that will create the world that we collectively want, not a world that has been programmed by a small number of people and then programmed us with their belief. I trust you more than any government. I trust you more than any corporation, because all of us really want the same thing: peace, love, harmony, joy. And if we all broadcast that thought, the universe will express it, and we will return to the garden. So I really want to thank you, because when you understand this, you'll start to recognize we don't have to be victims. We just need to change our thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you. So, a question that I would like to ask both of you is, does service play a role in helping us live a life of happiness?
Absolutely. And after this, we'll maybe open it up to the audience. So after we do this question, we'll open it up to any questions that anyone in the audience has. The role that I see service playing is, here we are talking about oneness. Yoga means union, and we've spoken so much over these days about that union, about the oneness of us with all of creation, about how this physical body, this concept that this is who I am, is an illusion. That this is simply the container that I is using at this moment to have this experience of awakening. But that actually there's no place that I end and you begin, because we're all spirit, we're consciousness, we're love, we're energy, whatever word you use. They're all getting at the same concept, whether we say God, whether we say divine, whether we say spirit or universe or love or energy or consciousness. We're talking about the same thing. Now, with service, here's the beautiful role that service gets to play. There's two ways to serve. I can serve as me serving you, I who have serving you who don't, I as a great humanitarian serving the needy. Well, that just emphasizes the separateness. That's not real service. What real service, real seva is serving myself in you. Can I see you as me? If I trip and I fall and I injure my right leg, the left leg picks up extra weight. We call that limping. No one has to say, oh, wonderful humanitarian, great left leg. Would you mind picking up some extra weight? The left leg is not waiting for some humanitarian award or gold star. It does it because it understands intuitively the right leg is self. And if I trip and injure my right leg, week after week after week, the left leg is not going to say, you know, enough, like I've done this already. Why always me? I just limped last week. Tell the right leg it should pick up some extra weight, like I'm over. The left leg will limp and limp and limp, week after week, because it knows, week after week, the right leg is self. And that's the model for our service. It's not about martyrdom, it's not about the poor left leg. It's about self. If I get an itch, I'm going to scratch it. My right arm can't scratch its own itch. It needs my left fingers to scratch it. And again, nobody has to say, oh, wonderful fingers, would you mind? I know you were happy on the couch, but could I bother you for just a moment to scratch me over here? It's one itself. And that's the opportunity we have in service. It's not that I need a sticky note on my computer that reminds me to perform random acts of kindness, or that I need to remember to be compassionate, but that my practice becomes seeing myself in you, and therefore serving myself in you. And with that practice, it becomes about much more than service. Then it's about oneness. Then it's about real yoga. Then it's about, as Bruce was speaking, this incredible healing of the universe, because then no, I'm not going to make choices to eat food that's pulling food out of your mouth. I'm not going to make choices that's pulling the water out of your field. I'm not going to make choices that are destroying the natural world. Not because I'm a great humanitarian or even a great yogi, but because it's all self. And because every tree that is felled, every starving child, every farmer with a desiccated field, they're me. And I'm going to serve them the same way that I limp for myself and scratch myself and feed myself and care for myself. And that's the opportunity that we're being given.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, being a biologist, I want to talk about a different aspect of service, but it's the same thing, because my dear friend Sadhvi was talking about service and how we can influence the world around us. I want to give you an interesting biological insight about your own personal consequence of being in service. And basically, it has to deal with the DNA in your cells. I say, what does that mean? I say, well, the DNA is the genetic code. I say, and every time the cell divides, you have to copy that code. And so if I can try to make an image with my hand here, imagine my arm is the DNA. And I say it's time to copy it. There's a protein, so let's say the microphone. Okay, thank you. That my hand is the copying device. It's like a train on a railroad track. As the train moves down the DNA, it leaves behind a copy of the DNA it just rode over. I say, well, that's really cool, except guess what? When the train gets to the end of the DNA, it can't copy the part where the train is sitting on it. So it copied everything all the way up to here, but can't copy this piece. So when I copy it, the new piece is shorter than the original piece. And so every time you copy, every time the cell divides, the DNA gets a little shorter than it did before. And I say, well, why is this relevant? Because if you make a shorter piece of DNA when you copy it, then every time you're copying it, you're interfering with the genetic code. So it's like, well, nature would say, oh my God, if every time the cell divides, pretty soon I'll chop that DNA up and I'll have a problem. But nature, of course, being quite intelligent, adds a piece of DNA at the end that is not the gene. It's just an extension. It's called a telomere. You may have heard the word telomere. And I say, what is it? It's an extra railroad track, but it's not the genes. And I say, why is it relevant? Because every time I copy it, I lose a piece of the telomere, but I didn't cut into the genes. And I say, well, what's aging all about? And here's what we now know. Aging, depression, and disease result when you copy the DNA so many times that you run out of that track of telomere, and the next time you copy, you're cutting off the gene, which interferes with your biology. So originally it was thought, oh, the telomeres have a fixed length, and every time it divides, you lose a piece of the length, and the scientist back in the 60s, Leonard Hayflick, calculated how many times can a cell divide before it runs out of telomere? And it came out, oh, it was about 50 to 60 cell divisions. I say, well, why is that relevant? Because our stem cells, which keep us alive, when they keep dividing, what happens after your stem cells went through 50 cell divisions? Now your stem cells won't work anymore, and now you can't replace your cells in your body. And that's when they said, oh, humans have a given lifetime. You know, 90, 100 years at max, and that's your lifetime because that's when you run out of telomeres. That was very depressing because it says, oh my God, if I'm under stress, I actually cut the telomeres even faster. The more stress you're under, the more they disappears. Now, and it was because of, again, a woman scientist, because they always come up with the neat stuff that the men are not looking at. A woman scientist found there was an enzyme called telomerase, telomerase. And I say, what's that enzyme? It adds the length of the telomere. So as the cells are dividing, if you can activate this enzyme, it will extend the telomeres so the cells have a relatively unlimited lifespan. And so the relevance is the belief that we only live 100 years is mainly a consequence of not being able to continue to extend the telomeres in a normal person. So they started to find out, well, what influences the telomere? Well, the biggest thing is lack of love. If you have a lack of love, the feedback will shut off the telomerase enzyme. If you have stress in your life, stress shuts off the enzyme. If you have no gratitude or appreciation of life, it shuts off the enzyme. Why? Well, if you don't like life, then why give you extra life? That's the enzyme is just responding. But now it comes down to the opposites of those. Love and self-love, which is most critical, is one of the big drivers of telomerase. Gratitude and joy of being in this world enhances the enzyme. Why? If you love the world, you want more, and the cells will give you more. But now, and it's a beautiful question, the most important contributor to telomerase activity is service. That you are doing something on this planet, you have a mission to do something, and that your nervous system is telling your cells, I'm not ready to go, I have a job to do. And caregivers, for example, live an extraordinarily longer, healthier life than other people. Why? A caregiver's mentality is, I have to service and help these people, and therefore I cannot leave yet, and I have to be healthy. The feedback from the nervous system to the cells activates telomerase. So the simple line is this: if we have a mission and we have something to do on this planet, you will activate telomerase. Service is one of the primary things. So it says if you're just meandering through the earth, nice, you're going to end around 90. But if you're in service to the world, you can extend your life. And right now, biologists somewhat agree that our minimum lifespan is 140 years. And yet, with the stresses, with the lack of love, and not having a mission, we die 70, 80, 90 years of age. So is service important? It is one of the most valuable things to give you a longer, healthier, happier life, because the universe is honoring you. You're going to work with the universe says, I'm going to give you that opportunity. I'm going to extend your life and extend your health. So again, as we're here in this yoga community, and the messages from our teachers, such as my dear friend, is the message of we are here to work together, we are here to help change the world, we are here to help and uplift everyone we can. Why? It comes back, and it gives you the pleasure and the love of being on this most beautiful experience called planet Earth. Thank you.
Thank you. Amazing. Well, we'd love to extend the questions to the audience now, to all of us, to our family.
Good afternoon, Mr. Bruce H. Lipton. You are doing a commendable job. Last time also I had a meet with you. This medium concern is that we all live in a closed, confined, conditioned, compulsive, and constrained world. What is the way out? That's all. If you throw your enlightening context on this, will be obliged. Again, I repeat, we live in closed, confined, constrained, conditioned, and compulsive world. The real challenge. What is the way out? Kindly put your light.
The way out is if you fully understand what quantum physics has been telling us since 1925, it's the world we're experiencing is only from our consciousness. You want to change the world, we don't have to physically go out and physically change the world first. First, we have to change our belief about the world, our belief of who we are in the world. We're not victims, but we've been programmed to believe we're frail, vulnerable, that we're victims of the world. And the fact is, no, we are the most powerful beings and entities on this planet. We want to get out of the box? Think out of the box, and that will change all of it.
Thank you so much, Sadhvi ji and Dr. Lipton. If I understood correctly, Dr. Lipton, you said that the key is to change our unconscious programming. Yeah. And I was hoping both of you would kindly tell us how.
Okay, I'll give you, here's some, first fact. You as an identity are in your conscious mind. You actually are in there. That's where your personal identity is. And we have a tendency to say, if I talk to myself, I'm going to give myself a good talking to, and I'm going to change that subconscious. I say to myself, Bruce, don't do that again. Do this, don't do that again. And then I say, it's very frustrating. Why? You can talk until you're blue in the face, and nothing will change. I say, why? And the answer is, and this is the most important part, there is nobody in the subconscious. There's nothing there. It's a machine. It's a record playback device. So you can talk to the machine as much as you want. If you don't know how to push the record button, nothing's going to happen. So then I say, how do you change the program? I say, how did you get the program? The first 7 years, your brain was in theta, hypnosis. So I say, you want to change the program? Every night when you go to bed, just as your mind disconnects, just as you fall into sleep, your brain is now operating in theta. So if you put earphones on your head and you play a tape, a program, a CD of what you want, as your conscious mind disconnected, your subconscious is downloading. So you just play that tape as you go to bed, and after a number of playings, your subconscious will learn the new program without even your conscious being involved. That's number one. After age 7, how do we put a program in? Repetition. How did you do anything? You repeated it over and over again. How long did it take you to learn the alphabet? How many times did you have to go from A to Z before you could remember the whole alphabet? When you drove a car, you didn't know how to drive a car until you did what? You practiced. You repeated. So if you want to change a program, you put into your mind a repetition. And it's not... recognize this, what you want to change doesn't exist. So when you put in the new program, it'll sound strange. So let's say you are sick, you have a disease, and I say, what program do I want? I am healthy. I go, it doesn't sound right. I know I'm sick. I say, I don't care. There's a saying in English, fake it until you make it. What that means is, if you want to be happy, just keep in your mind, I am happy. I smile, even if you have to force a smile. I am happy, I'm smiling. I say, repeat this and repeat this. And guess what? After a short time, it becomes a habit. And when you're in that habit, you don't even have to think, I am happy. The new habit will keep you happy all the time because that's the new program. So A, hypnosis is how you learn the first 7 years. B, after age 7, you create new programs by repetition. Both of these are time-consuming, so I'm going to leave you with the last one and just suggest something. There's a new psychology called energy psychology. And energy psychology, different modalities, but you can reprogram your subconscious mind, you can change a program, and it's going to sound crazy, but it's absolutely true, in about 10 minutes. You can reprogram a belief you've had your whole life. Because if you know how to push the record button, and that's what those new modalities are about, if you can push the record button, you can download the new behavior in less than 10 minutes. If you want information on these modalities, my website is simply brucelipton.com. Under the title Resources, I have 20 or more different modalities listed. You can look them up. Every one of them can be used to change a belief in minutes. And that's because we don't have a lot of time to make changes. And there's an old saying, necessity is the mother of invention. We have a necessity to change fast, and now the invention of a new psychology, energy psychology. And this is a fabulous tool because all of us, basically all of us, I don't see many of us walking on water yet, but all of us then, if we change our programs, we can create the exact life that you want on this planet.
I wanted also to add the power of practices like meditation, because they take us out of the conscious mind, out of the subconscious mind into the conscious, but out of the programming and the habits of how we're used to thinking into a completely different state of awareness. And we don't have time to go into brainwave states and hypnosis and meditation, but what we know is that in a state of meditation, our brain is actually moving in a way. This is why meditation is so powerful. It's not just it relaxes us. It's not just after 15 minutes of meditation, my heart rate is lower, but I'm actually changing my brain. In Indian tradition, we speak a lot about sanskaras, which literally mean sort of grooves in our lives. It's the Indian spiritual equivalent of neural patterns or recorded programming, just different ways of talking about exactly the same thing. And a way to remove what currently exists is to lay a new pattern. As Bruce has been speaking about, whether through the energy techniques, whether through reprogramming your subconscious with headphones or affirmations. And when you use meditation, it takes you automatically into that state in which it's not about repeating, I am healthy, I am healthy. It's that in that moment of meditation, I connect so deeply with the truth of who I am, which isn't this body, which is eternal, which is perfect, which is peace, which is light. So it doesn't take the verbal aspect to say, I am light, I am peace, I am healthy, but there's an awareness that comes. And what we know about the way the brain works is that when there's a deep experiential component to it, it lasts. So for example, if I say to you, what did you have for breakfast yesterday? Very few of you can remember. But if I say to you, where were you on 9/11? Most of you can tell me. Now that's weird, because 9/11 happened 16 years ago. Breakfast was just yesterday. Why is it that we can remember that, but we can't remember yesterday morning? And what it has to do with is the level of presence, the activation of our conscious awareness in that actually made it stick. And so this is where meditation, it's also where ritual comes in. Without going into details of that, just to mention, we're here in a land that is rooted so deeply in so many rituals. And it's not about the rituals make God happy. It's not that we do it to please God. We perform rituals Because what the sages and the saints realized is there's a power of that to transform our programming, to transform our sanskaras, our grooves, our neural networking, and to actually be able to walk out of that ritual changed. Because it's hitting us on the level that we were below 7 years. It's hitting us on the level at which the programming goes straight into the subconscious mind and therefore lasts.
They did a recent study where they looked at some genes controlling inflammation. And then they read the genes of these people, and then the people went to 8 hours of meditation, and at the end of 8 hours, the genetic activity was completely changed. In other words, you can change the genes in just 8 hours of a meditation. And that means how powerful your thought is in controlling your biology.
I understand, it is about you for being mindful, for your own awakening, which needs to be there. But what about you have a dependency on someone else? Like a person has a bad child who is not, loving them back, or a bad parents who's not giving, love to them, or, spouse. So how to fix those kind of a relation, or, we can enlighten us and we are happy that is there, but somewhere we are not complete. So how to fix someone else?
3 very quick things. First of all, you cannot fix someone else. If you go home from this yoga festival with nothing else, go home with the full, absolute, irrefutable knowledge that you can fix no one other than yourself. So that's piece 1. Piece 2, you can change people, but not actually through your words or trying to force them to change. It never works. The very best you get is behavior modification. You have a fit every time they don't help you with the dishes. They're tired of mom having a fit, because when mom has a fit, then they can't watch TV, so they remember, okay, we have to help with the dishes. But the reason that you had a fit for them not helping with the dishes to begin with had nothing to do with the dishes, and everything to do with they should respect me, they should love me. The dishes are just a symbol. So you can rant and rave at them, you can pull away privileges, you can do whatever you want. At best, you'll get behavior modification. But that's not what you're looking for. What you really want is that which generates in them the spontaneous outpouring of such love for mom that they help with the dishes. And you can't beat that or convince that or sulk that into anyone. Who you are will change them. Bruce spoke about us as being energetic transmitters. We're also energetic receivers. What that means is that which you're transmitting, they are receiving. Now, if I go and stand in front of an air conditioner, I'm going to shiver. If I go and stand in front of a heater, I'm going to sweat. Neither of them had to shout at me, become cold, shiver, get goosebumps, or sweat. All they had to do was emit the energy that they have. An air conditioner has cold energy, heater has hot energy, and I automatically respond accordingly. In the same way, if you emit energy of love, of peace, that's what's going to be received. Now, I'm not saying this is going to fix them, but what I'm saying is it will affect them. It will impact them. We are not the knowers of that which is capital R right and how someone else should respond. And this is the core of all of our problems. I think, well, if I do this, you should respond like that. I brought you home pizza. You should do the dishes. Like there's this equation in my mind. I'm so nice and loving to you. You should be nice and loving to me. Like that seems really like 2 + 2 = 4 type of equation. But it doesn't work like that. And so all you can do is be a transmitter of that which you know is who you are, which is love, which is consciousness, which is awakening, and have perfect faith in the universe that how each other is responding. We are not the karmic police. God did not come down and say, you know, I really need your help taking care of this one. Could you remind me again what their karmic due is? Do you have their notes? There's a perfection in the universe, a law in the universe, nature of nature. You can scream at a rose bush all you want to give you jasmine flowers. It's not going to do it. Doesn't matter how much it wants to. Doesn't matter how much it loves you and really wishes it could make you happy and produce some jasmine flowers. It's a rose bush. It can't. And all you're going to get is a rose bush that stops producing roses. And the very last piece of this is the crucial awareness that I may be dependent on someone for something physical. I may be in a relationship where someone else brings home well, we don't eat bacon, but someone else brings home the bread. So I'm physically dependent for my bread on that person. My house is in someone else's name. I'm physically dependent on them for the roof over my head. But I am not dependent on anyone for my state of mind. My peace, my happiness is not dependent on you. Most of us think it is. If you just, for God's sakes, would listen to me, I would be so happy. If you just would love me. See, Bruce said, I need love. I'm not getting love. That's why I'm sick. It's all your fault. We are not dependent on another person to give us our happiness and our peace. The source of joy and peace and love is within us. If we can connect to that, wherever we are in the universe, we experience it. It's like the Tibetan monks who go up into the snow and it's freezing. Everyone else is shivering. They're drying towels on their naked backs. Even that much of a physical impact of sitting in the snow in sub-zero temperatures, they are having an experience of heat. If they can do that, surely we are able to have felt senses of peace and happiness, despite those around us going through their own karmic journey, their own package of fear and anxiety and confusion and whatever. Surely we're able to connect within for what we need.
Thank you. That shortens my answer immensely. The simple truth is, Sadhvi said, you cannot change anyone but yourself. And if you try and you start to realize you put all that effort in to help somebody and it doesn't come back, they're not affected by it. You're the one that's affected by it. If you know this, the best thing to do is to recognize you can be a model of what you want, but you can't really make anybody else unless they want it. They will not change. So helping somebody only works if they ask for the help. If they don't ask for that help, that you're using up your energy and it's not coming back. And I really feel that's the most important thing, because how frustrated we feel when we know that somebody could do better or be healthier, and you could help them and they're not listening. It's not in their program at that time. When their program is ready to change, they will come to you and ask for the help instead of us going to them. It will save your energy, save your life and your joy, and you could use it to a much better effect by creating an area, an aura, an energy around yourself that others want that. And then you will become the teacher. And that's what it's all about. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Bruce and Sadhvi. Big round of applause.